Hey guys, the lighting in here is kind of crappy, and I'm recording with my laptop, so I don't have to hold a camera. So bear with that. I had a great idea that I think is cool, so I wanted to share it with you guys in case it's useful for other people. Last year, I moved to a house that's on a river, so I got a really basic, regular kayak. So I had a lot of fun kayaking last year, and I did a little bit of fishing, but it's not a fishing kayak, so it's not geared for that. So I'm going to be adding stuff to it this spring to gear it up so that it's going to be more fun to fish out of and not just kayaking. So I bought an anchor. I bought a yak-gear. Actually, I bought a yak-gear anchor. It's kind of a long story. They sent me a couple of sample equipment, and I bought a bunch of their other gear because what they sent me was really great quality. So I've got some yak-gear stuff. And for the anchor, I want to have an anchor float, which is essentially just a small buoy that is able to slide along the rope that your anchor's tied onto, so that if your anchor line comes loose, or if you have some reason to need to drop the line while you're fishing, you can do so, and the end of your rope will be floated so that you can go get your anchor back afterwards without it sinking to the bottom. Those floats are usually something you have to buy separate, and they're usually pretty expensive, it seems, for what they are. I think they're like, depending on where you go, the cheapest ones I see online are around $15, which for something that's just got to not sink and be little is kind of silly. So I have this idea for a homemade anchor float that's a lot cheaper and customizable a bit. So I'm going to show you guys my idea and how it works. So to do this, I went to the hardware store. For each one of these floats, it's about $2 in parts. Well, maybe $3 or $4 tops, depending on where you go. So the first thing you're going to need is this is called an eye bolt. This one might be a 1/4 inch by 1 5/8 inches, I think. Doesn't need to be very big. Just a big enough hole that you can comfortably fit your anchor rope through, whatever kind of line you're using. I'm using 550 paracord on my anchor, so it doesn't need to be very big. Some of these are flat, almost like a washer on top instead of rounded the way this one is, and I don't recommend those just because I'm afraid of it rubbing a little too hard and making the rope fray prematurely. So I definitely wanted a round one specifically. Next, you're going to need a pair of small washers. All this stuff that I got is just the cheap zinc stuff. If you want to get stainless, you can for the extra money, but I don't think it's going to matter for this. Next, I got 2 small rubber washers that fit those rubber gaskets that fit those washers. So a pair of those to go with the washers. Those may not be necessary. I got them just in case. And then the store that I got my eye bolt at came with 1 hex nut. And then I got another hex nut that's a locking hex nut. If the eye bolt hadn't come with a regular hex nut on it, then I probably would have gotten 2 locking ones. But I'm going to make use of the freebie. The other thing I got is I went to a dollar store and got some cheapo nail polish in a bright color. This is what's going to color the float. And so there's, one of the areas where you can customize. I got a couple colors, and I'm making a few of these so me and my son and my wife can all have our own color when we're out on water. So the nail polish was at the dollar store, so obviously $1. And all the hardware combined from the hardware store for this was about $2. So about $3 worth of supplies. The other thing that you're going to need, which is probably going to be free for you because you probably have them left over, is going to be a empty plastic bottle. I'm using 20-ounce Gatorade bottles because they're firmer and a little more structurally sound, I think, as far as resisting getting squished. It's a little bit thicker plastic than like a Pepsi bottle, as far as I can tell. So I'm going to use these. You can use anything really that your washers will fit in the lid of, which is, for these size that I'm using, almost anything. So you can use a 20-ounce bottle, a 1 liter, a 2 liter, whatever you think you need. And obviously a bigger bottle is going to float more, have more buoyancy, but I don't think we need to do anything crazy. And of course you're going to need the lid to your Gatorade bottle. The tools, I've got just 2 sets, 2 pliers here, robo grips, and a drill bit that is roughly the same size as your eye bolt shank there. So what we're going to do is create this. This is one that's done. So it's the eye bolt with I've got the regular hex nut screwed all the way to the top, washer, and then a gasket. Then the Gatorade lid, and then same thing on the other side, a gasket, washer, and then the locking hex nut. So I tightened this hex nut just as tight as I could with my hands to the top of the eye bolt, and then I tightened the lock nut as hard as I could just with my hands with the pliers all the way down on that. So this is very, very secure, and my theory here is that with the washers and the gaskets, this should be a watertight seal. If after I play with it, turns out it's not, I'll probably just take it apart and add a little bit of silicone on there, just like you would if you were installing a cleat on your boat, just to waterproof it up. And so the idea is that will attach to the bottle. When I'm all done, I'll probably super glue the lid on to make sure it never comes loose. And then your anchor line goes through there, and this will be your float. And I'm expecting this to work pretty good. Anchor floats commonly are right around this size. 3 inches by 5 inches is a pretty common float size that I've seen online. So I expect this is going to do just fine. My goal isn't that this is strong enough to float the whole anchor, just strong enough to float the end of the rope so I can pull the anchor back up. So it doesn't, even if you have a larger anchor than me, that shouldn't matter so much as long as you have plenty of rope to reach the bottom, which obviously if you're using the anchor, you must. So the nail polish. What I did was I took Gatorade bottles and I rinsed them out really well, and I just dumped the nail polish in, the whole bottle, and just kind of swirled it around so that it's full of color, just to coat the inside as much as I could. One of those cheap nail polishes wasn't quite enough to totally coat the entire inside, so I'm probably going to go back and grab a second bottle of each color just to help complete the paint so it's kind of even looking, but it'll still serve its purpose. Even if you skipped this step, this is just to make it look kind of pretty and more finished, but it'd be easier to see, obviously, but I mean, it's not necessary. So I'm going to let these, I just did these, I dumped the nail polish in, I put a lid on that hadn't been drilled yet so it couldn't leak, and I just kind of smacked it on my knee and rolled it around to spread out the nail polish as evenly as I could. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be there at all, theoretically, but so that's what I went with. Then I'm going to take a drill with I'll give you some sizes. I used a 3/32 drill bit. I wrote down what sizes I used for everything. So my eye bolts are 3/16 by 2 inches. The washers are 1/4 inch washers, because they didn't have the exact right size, so I used 1/4 inch washers. And the lock nuts are 10/24. I don't really know hardware, so this is just what it said on the box. The lock nuts are 10/24 coarse thread lock nuts, and 1/4 inch gaskets to go with those washers. So drill a hole through your lid, relatively centered, and then you just put the pieces together and tighten it up. So I'm going to take the eye bolt, I'm going to put the plain hex nut on first. If I had 2 lock nuts, it wouldn't matter, just because I want the locking nut underneath and to help hold everything together. And then a washer, which is going to keep good even pressure on the gasket, is my hope. That's the idea. So you've got, this is pretty straightforward. Drop the lid on. If it's a nice tight fit, you can screw the lid a little bit, but if you drill it to the right side, you can just press it in. Put on the other gasket, the other washer, throw on the lock nut, and then I am just taking a pair of Robo Grips, and this is as far as lock nut types, this is the type that has like the Teflon or nylon or whatever it is on the inside. It's not the kind that has the little metal like grippy fingers. I don't really know what they're called, but I saw that other type there and I didn't want those because I don't want it to be digging. I don't know, I just didn't want it. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a handyman. I don't really have tons of knowledge that I'm basing this on. I just thought this made sense to me as somebody who knows only enough to be dangerous. And once you get it down tight, try to make sure the washers are relatively centered and the gaskets are underneath them relatively okay, just so that it grabs alright. And I'm going to tighten this bottom washer, bottom nut, as hard as I can up on the threads so that it doesn't have room to come loose away from this other nut. And then I'm going to screw this on. And once I got it as hard as I can with my fingers, I just took another pair of pliers to give me some leverage and make sure that I've got this on there super tight. Because I don't want this to leak or come loose, because if it were to, that would defeat the whole point of the float. So, and that's all it is. So now you've got your lid here. Screw this onto your bottle, run your anchor line through, and you're all set. That's your float. If the bottle ever gets punctured or anything or beat up, you can just keep this part and replace it with any other Gatorade bottle. So these ones that I just added the nail polish to, I'm going to let these sit overnight at least and make sure they're nice and dry. There's quite a bit of fumes coming out of that nail polish. So I'll make sure they're nice and dry and everything. And then when they're done, I'm probably going to super glue the lid on. And maybe even, I'm probably just going to super glue it on, I think, just to make sure the lid can't come loose, out on the water. And then we should be good. So this is a 20-ounce Gatorade bottle. This is a 32-ounce Gatorade bottle, so not very different in size. So these seem like they should be fine for what I'm going to use them for. If you needed more lift, you could use a bigger bottle, a 1 liter or a 2 liter or something. And I think this would still work just fine. So I'm using Gatorade again instead of Pepsi or Coke because with all this texturing in the plastic, it makes it kind of more rugged, and I just want it to be, as strong as I can. This is just a little bit thicker plastic than what like a Pepsi bottle is made out of, as far as I can tell. So, and with all this texturing, it strengthens it. So that's that. I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope it's useful. So again, my final cost with the nail polish, and if you had to buy the Gatorade bottle, which, most people probably have a plastic bottle somewhere, is like $4. So, and if the bottle ever gets punctured or something, everything except the bottle part will be reusable. So you go spend $1.50 or $2, whatever, on a new beverage, and you can enjoy your Gatorade and then put your lid back on. All this hardware should stay good. Again, I got the cheap zinc stuff. It'd be an extra like $2 total if you wanted to get stainless. I don't think it's going to matter enough for what I'm doing with it. And that's it. Enjoy.